A total disregard for safety, hundreds of injured visitors, and no less than 6 deadly cases. You can find it all in
There's nothing in the world like Action Park.
The Ads Don't Lie. The fun on offer at Vernon Township Action Park in the first years of its existence was virtually unrivaled in how extreme and risky it was. So, is it the deadliest theme park in history? Keep watching to find out. But I'm warning you, as always, viewer discretion is advised. An employee of Action Park put on his helmet, grabbed his inflatable stick, and made for the arena that resembled a giant trampoline. It was one of the park's crazy attractions called Gladiator Challenge, where the participants had to fight. That's how Action Park lured visitors. You wouldn't just sit in some carriage or spin mindlessly on a carousel. You had to act. Park guests and employees would lock in mock combat, which often spilled into serious conflict. That's what happened this time too. The gladiator turned out more agile than his adversary, hitting him with the inflatable stick a few times. The visitor took it as a personal offense and decided to retaliate against the park employee who was just doing his job. Yes, fighting clients is quite an unusual task from the management, but the spirit of competition and excitement would always take over both parties. A few minutes later, the resentful visitor returned with a group of friends seeking revenge. No one used soft props this time. It was a real full-blown hand-to-hand fight. A few dozen people found themselves in the center of chaos that was impossible to stop without police intervention. Law enforcement was already on the premises since another conflict was unfolding in another part of the park. A group of rescue workers was fighting with bodybuilders who'd pushed their guard colleagues into a swimming pool. How do you like this type of action? That's just an ordinary day at this crazy fun institution. At first, the park was just another ski resort named Vernon Valley. However, one day its owner, Eugene Mulvihill, had a genius idea on how to monetize the property in the warm season. He decided to build an amusement park on the premises. However, Eugene considered regular parks boring. The attractions usually boil down to just being strapped into something and then taken to another place or twirled around. He wanted something more American, steeped in freedom and decisiveness. So, in his ads, Eugene underscored that the main highlight of his park would be the visitors being in control of everything, regulating the speed of rides, choosing the routes, and even kicking the butts of employees. This aggressive approach worked like a charm on teenagers. Reporter Evan Schumann even once said, "If you're wondering how someone can be so stupid to go to a park that has rides like this, combine a 16-year-old boy with alcohol, and you'd be surprised how stupid they can get." After hearing these words, you're probably curious. How did the attractions that stirred up such public resonance look? The park was divided into 3 sections: Motor World, Alpine Center, and Water World. Let's start with Motor World. It was famous for its battle action tanks attraction. Participants would split into teams and fire a cannon loaded with tennis balls at each other. And for a separate fee, audience members could also buy balls to shoot at the participants from the spectator zone. Yet everyone's favorite activity was to throw tennis balls at the staff that had to pick them up. In addition, the employees found another use for the balls. They somehow found a way to stuff them into the speed regulators of carts. This allowed the vehicles to gain a speed of 80 kilometers per hour instead of the normal 30. The staff even rode these Lola cars on the very real Route 94 highway after work. So we can't say that Action Park's attraction operators were all that miserable at work. Quite the opposite. Just like their visitors, they were just ordinary teenagers and young adults chasing extreme sensations. For example, Rio Ferdinand claims that being a park employee was the perfect option for his age. And Tracy McLaughlin also has warm memories of her time working for the institution and still shares them on numerous social media platforms. Yet Action Park didn't give every visitor a fun and thrilling childhood. For some, it cut theirs tragically short. July 8, 1980, George Larson Jr. sat on a small sled, pulled the control lever, and started his descent from a slide in the Alpine Center. It was an 820-meter route that resembled a long concrete snake that led down to the foot of the hill. At first, the descent went smoothly for George, yet the speed kept increasing, and at some point, the sled got flung out of the route. George didn't have the time to react and fell onto a pile of rocks, hitting his head. The blow was so powerful that he immediately went into a coma and died a week later. Action Park's Alpine slide was infamous before this incident as well. The sleds broke repeatedly, and their speed could be regulated by the rider, but only had two modes, either incredibly slow or so fast that one employee described this option as the death awaits mode. The chutes made of concrete, fiberglass, and asbestos caused severe injuries even during minor falls. This was mainly because people were wearing shorts and light summer sleeveless clothes, leaving their bodies without any protection. However, Eugene Mulvihill, the owner of the park, didn't insist on introducing any special clothing requirements to go on rides. For example, on Surf Hill, people slid down the tilted surface on rugs and eventually hit the water, and sometimes their bathing suits would simply fall off. Do you want to know how Eugene solved this problem? He built spectator stands so that the visitors could enjoy this exciting sight. The park guests tried different attractions and entered them without changing, still in their bathing suits. Even the Alpine slide. That's why they sustained serious skin abrasions. Only when George died did the question arise, is this really safe? And who's to blame for his death? To evade responsibility, park representatives claimed that George was an employee and enjoyed the slide in leisure hours. This position was partially rooted in the fact that George actually used to be a park employee before, although, at the moment of the incident, he might not have been working there anymore. In a documentary called Class Action Park, Larson's mother and brother say that the park used this argument to avoid telling state inspectors about the death. Had professionals examined the site, they could have noticed the issues they'd previously demanded to fix, such as rocks scattered on the tracks. In the end, the family got compensation for $100,000. But George's life can't be brought back. The slide remained one of the park's most dangerous attractions until it was closed for a good 16 years after the incident. However, this mess, just like many others, was cleaned for Eugene Mulvihill, an insurance company in the Cayman Islands that had been working with the park since its creation, taking care of its every accident, of which there had been a lot. The deadliest zone of the park was Waterworld, claiming a record number of lives. August 27, 1984, Donald DePass entered the water of the tidal wave pool. The size of the pool was stunning. 30 meters wide and 76 meters long, it could accommodate up to 1,000 people. Its main feature was that every 20 minutes, a special mechanism stirred huge waves up to 1 meter in height, which tripped and submerged even the most skilled swimmers. Although the guards were on duty everywhere, on weekends they'd save up to 30 people a day, all because it wasn't always clear that closer to the far end, the pool went deeper. The people realized they couldn't surface only when they'd end up with their heads underwater. Donald was one of such visitors. At first, he was enjoying the attraction, but soon, he found he was running out of strength. The waves kept rolling on and pulling him increasingly farther away from safety. He tried with all his might to stay afloat, but the waves kept on tripping him until he started drowning and choking on water. Because of the noise and the chaos, the people around Donald didn't notice him frantically fighting for his life. And then, it was too late. Apart from that, the water was murky, and the pool's dark floor further complicated the rescuers' task. When Donald was taken to the surface, the medics didn't manage to save his life. The worst thing about this situation is that Donald became the third victim of this pool. 2 years before him, 15-year-old George Lopez faced the same death. And 3 years after Donald, this same fate befell 18-year-old Gregory Grandchamps. For this, the attraction got nicknamed the Grave Pool. One of the pool's victims was dragged out of the water by the owner's son, Andy Mulvihill, who worked for his father as one of the guards. And this horrible experience made him recall working in the water zone with dread. And drowning wasn't the only way to die in the water world. August 1st, 1982, Jeffrey Nathan was going down a water route called the Kayak Experience. Special submerged fans stirred whitewater rapids, imitating the most challenging conditions found in natural rivers. Suddenly, Jeffrey's inflatable kayak tipped over. The man found himself in the water and tried to get back into the boat, but the intense currents were pushing him in different directions. At that very moment, one of the underwater fans broke, causing an electric spark. The current passed through the water and electrocuted Jeffrey. The shock immediately sent him into cardiac arrest. 2 other water ride participants were also injured, but their lives were saved. The medics tried to resuscitate Jeffrey, but he died. 40 minutes after being dragged out of the water. The ride was closed, just one attraction, not the entire park. The next tragedy didn't take long to happen. 1984, a young man was tightly gripping the rope on the Tarzan swing, preparing to jump. On this attraction, the visitors swung on a 6-meter rope hanging from a steel arch over a crystal-clear spring pool, and then dived into the water. Just like the other rides and attractions, this one had many flaws. Sometimes the rope would swing too hard, and the guests would hit their toes on the concrete of the opposite side. Yet this didn't make the line to the attraction any shorter. Finally, the young man jumped over the cliff and screamed from the adrenaline rush. Yet this euphoria didn't last long. He didn't expect the water to be so cold. It reached around 10 to 16 degrees Celsius, which was much lower than in the park's other zones. Because of this, when the man dived, his body underwent such intense stress that he had a cardiac arrest and died. After the tragedy, the park changed the water temperature in the attractions. All in all, 6 horrible deaths happened in the park, but there could have been more. A teenager was standing near the top of a water ride, catching looks filled with awe and fear. No one else dared to try the new roller coaster called Cannonball Loop, since this ride was so dangerous that even the biggest daredevils refused to take such a risk. The coaster reached 6 meters in height, and its loop had an angle of 45 degrees. Not everyone was allowed on board. A large weight could get a person stuck there. Insufficient weight could prevent them from gaining speed. And if the visitor was wearing clothes with a zipper, the zipper could get caught on something and hurt the person. The teenager was trying to hide his fear since rumor had it that the mannequins used to test the ride left the loop with no extremities. All because the coaster had a vertical loop at its very end that put immense pressure on the visitor's body. The loop reportedly broke the laws of physics, and the sensation of going on it was similar to going to space. The teenager lied down on his back, put his arms on his chest, crossed his ankles, and started his crazy descent. The spectators held their breaths. While the guy was going in a straight line, everything was fine. However, upon starting the loop, he hit the back of his head on the ride's wall, almost losing consciousness. Yet, he got very lucky. After being pushed out of the pipe, he quickly mastered the situation, stood on his feet, and smiled at the crowd, applauding him as a hero who'd tamed the most dangerous ride of all time. However, not that many people have ridden Cannonball Loop. The slide constantly got clogged with mud and sand that accumulated in the loop itself, and this caused people countless injuries. That's why it was closed very soon. People say that if the loop hadn't been closed, it would have definitely multiplied the number of deaths in Action Park. I'm sure that so far into the video, your only question is, how did the owner of such a dangerous park keep his controversial business running for so long? Eugene Mulvihill was a master of persuasion. He was so influential that even the investigators who worked with the numerous accidents often left the park feeling like everything was under control. But the key detail was the insurance company in the Cayman Islands that helped the owner avoid consequences for the accidents. As it turned out, it was created by Mulvihill himself. This trick helped him evade responsibility, but in the end, the park went crashing down. In 1996, the place got closed due to a bankruptcy caused by the endless lawsuits. But our story doesn't end there. The park was purchased and renamed Mountain Creek Water Park. And in 2015, the Mulvihill family took back the ownership, introducing stricter safety rules. Today, the park operates without its dangerous attractions, yet the memories of its past remain alive in pop culture of the 80s and 90s, just like Backstreet Boys, Furby, or Nickelodeon. Still, just like with the latter, even the most colorful memories often hide dark moments. Action Park, so beloved by Gen X parkgoers, became a grave for 6 of its visitors. Tell us in the comments, which attraction from the old Action Park would you risk riding if you'd even dare to visit what's possibly the deadliest amusement park in history? Why possibly? Because according to some speculations, other parks might be even worse. For example, Coney Island Park, which was opened in the early 20th century. In 1910, only one ride on the attraction, called Rough Riders, killed 4 people. Since no one kept track of the death toll back then, we can only guess how many such incidents occurred in 121 years of the park's existence. In my next video, I can reveal the approximate number of all the incidents in this park. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. And, as always, take care of yourselves.